Heritage and some things to do with hosting a Learn to Hunt event. So I'll just go ahead and turn it over to Colby if you want to share any more about yourself, and I'll let you get started.
Yeah, thanks, Katie and Kim. I'm glad to be here tonight and welcome everybody. Thanks again, as Katie said, for taking the time out of your evening. My name's Colby Kerber. I'm the Hunting Heritage Program Manager, and I'm located in central Nebraska. So I know we'll have some people on here from Missouri and Illinois both here tonight. But again, thank you guys for taking your time, and just thanks for everything that you do for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. I've been with the organization for about 10 years now. Started off as a Farm Bill wildlife biologist, then took on a regional representative role, and now work across the country with our Hunting Heritage Program. But everything that we do, from habitat to education and outreach and everything in between, we absolutely couldn't do it without volunteers like yourself. So thank you for all the role that you've played helping the organization out. So with that, I guess as far as questions and stuff, Kim and Katie, can everybody speak up, or do we just have them raise their hands if they have questions and things? We'll go through a webinar presentation here, but with any kind of presentation like this, it's best to be interactive. So if you have any questions at all, make sure to put it in the chat box or raise your hand, so that way we can make sure to get it answered. This is for you guys, so anything we can do to help out. So with that, we're going to talk tonight about our Learn to Hunt program and some best management practices of hosting a Learn to Hunt. We're going to talk about the reason why we host Learn to Hunt events and some of the best management practices for hosting those. And then we're just going to talk about some other things to consider if you're hosting a Learn to Hunt event with your chapter. Obviously, hunting season is already started. Many seasons opened up September 1st, from grouse and dove and early archery seasons, and teal seasons going on in some areas now. So we're right in the thick of things, and I'm sure, as everybody else, I am super, super excited to introduce more hunters this fall. Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever's education and outreach team, we are dedicated to sharing our passion for the outdoors and appreciation for wild places with a diverse audience of men and women of all ages. So when we talk tonight about our Learn to Hunt events, one thing that I would specifically challenge you to think about is not just doing the youth events like we have in the past, but think about ways that we can incorporate all ages, men and women, and a diverse audience. So maybe you've always just done a one-day traditional youth mentored hunt, but maybe there's a possibility to involve the family, involve the parents, involve other opportunities. So that's one of the focuses that we have, but we're trying to provide a variety of opportunities to experience conservation and give individuals a way to find their own unique path to the uplands. So you're going to start hearing us talk about that. Path to the Uplands could be a women's event. It could be because of their passion for cooking. It could be their passion for bird dogs, but we're trying to create different opportunities for all generations. We won't spend much time on this slide, but where we're going to focus our efforts here tonight is hunting heritage, and that is the pillar that falls underneath my position. You've probably heard the term R3 before in the past, and that is to recruit, retain, and reactivate hunter conservationists. So that's where we're going to focus our efforts tonight. If you're from Illinois or Missouri, you're lucky to have Kim and Katie on board as outreach coordinators. We do not have outreach coordinators in all of our states. I wish we did. They are an absolute huge effort in everything that we do. And you guys are very lucky to have two passionate individuals to help you guys in everything that you're doing. So big part of their jobs is R3. That's also a big part of our partnerships with state agencies and our other NGO partners. So the goals and benefits of all of our outreach events is to have a fun, safe environment, to share our outdoor traditions, and to inspire youth and families to spend time outdoors together. And as we've seen with this whole worldwide pandemic that's been going on over the past 6 months, it is absolutely crucial to get individuals outdoors more and getting them doing stuff together, not only as individuals, but taking others with them. it's also a great opportunity for your chapter to recruit new volunteers. Over the many years that I spent working with volunteers as a regional representative, the number one question I got from all of my chapter leaders is, how do we recruit new volunteers to our chapter? And the number one thing by far was putting on really strong outreach events. Outreach events bring new people to your chapter. It brings on new sponsors. It brings in new money. If you put on a strong outreach event, whether it's pollinator event, a learn to hunt event, or other opportunities, it will help your chapter out. And then at the end, I have safe fun again. That is not a misprint, but again, that is the number one and the last thing to be thinking about, because at the end, if we're trying to create new volunteers or new hunters, it's going to be based around having fun. So what is a learn to hunt event? Learn to hunt events can take a lot of different shapes and forms, but they are specifically designed to introduce novice hunters into the field. They're planned well in advance, and they provide the participants with knowledge and skills. And there's an interaction with experienced ethical mentors. That's a big key to making these successful, is making sure you have those right mentors, and you're going to be doing hands-on activities. So those skill building activities where they can actually touch and feel and be a participant throughout the entire event. Planning is gonna be your friend when it comes to anything that you do, but specifically with these learn to hunt events that have a lot of different moving parts. So what I always recommend to chapters is start planning well in advance. 6 months should be the starting point, if not a year in advance. You should have an outreach chair, somebody who is gonna be that main point of contact to take the lead with making everything flow and stay organized. And you should also have that outreach chair put together a outreach committee. So that committee is specifically going to be worried about the learn to hunt event and other outreach events that you do. And then if you have the luxury of having enough volunteers, you would have a separate banquet committee because there's a lot that goes on with a banquet. There's a lot that goes on with outreach events. So if you are lucky enough to have enough volunteers to where you can have your own outreach committee, that is a huge bonus. The last thing that I would say is make sure that you're following along with a checklist. We have examples available. It's something that we can follow up with at the end of this event. We can send out some example checklists. Some chapters do a great job, and they go through starting with 6 months out, 5 months out, and they go through that checklist to make sure that they're staying on task. So that's something that you can adapt to your own local area and make sure that you're doing everything that's needed. But the biggest thing is plan well in advance. When you're doing that planning, one of the first things that you're going to want to think about is a date for your event. So again, planning is going to be your friend. Consider the species that you're hunting. So right now, there's already learn to hunt events that are starting to take place across the country. Specifically, dove hunts is a big one that's going on over here the last couple of weeks. But if you're like we are here in Nebraska, the doves are here for, the first week or two at the most. You get a good cold snap and they're gone. So you're going to have to take that into consideration. You're also going to have to take your state and federal laws into consideration when it comes to your species. Other things that I highly recommend is school calendars. Check with your local school and make sure that you're not planning your event on a high school football night, or if you're planning it on holidays and things like that. And make sure you're well in advance with your facility to make sure that they're available to host your outing. One thing too to consider, a pretty cool opportunity, is to do it during National Hunting and Fishing Day. You're going to see a lot of activity around the country, and that falls every year on the 4th Saturday in September. And it's just another unique way to get your voice out there in your community. Site selection is going to be a huge part of your event. Obviously, you're going to need some indoor space where possible, where you can have some classroom settings, restrooms, and cooking facilities. But then the big thing is going to be that outdoor space. Ideally, to host an event, you'd like to have it at a trap range to where you can do your wing shooting instruction and your gun safety, do a little bit of target practice, and then head right to the fields for hunting. But other things to think about is when you're going to host your event, if you're new to hosting one, is where are you going to park the vehicles? Especially if you're doing, for say, a wild bird pheasant hunt, you're going to have to think about, what if it rains that day and it's muddy? What if we have parents that are from the inner city that don't have 4-wheel drive vehicles? These are some things just to take into consideration when planning an event. And then obviously the big part is going to be the actual hunting site itself. Other things to think about is what species you're going to be hunting, and really put some thought, time, and effort into making sure that they're local and abundant. Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever is our logo and our organizational name, but we go much more above and beyond that. So I would recommend that you look outside of just those species. It gives you a couple of different opportunities. Again, dove hunts is a big one I mentioned. Upland birds is a big one, but rabbits and squirrels, that used to be the introduction for all hunters 50 years ago, was getting into small game hunting. And we've kind of lost a lot of those traditions. So think about ways where you could take advantage of those earlier seasons for small game. Other things like waterfowl, deer hunts. A lot of times there's opportunities through your state agencies and others where landowners want to get rid of some antlerless white-tailed deer. So there can be some great opportunities there to do a mentored hunt. And then coyotes and turkeys. Maybe you're not able to host a youth mentor hunt this fall because of COVID and the things going on. Think about a turkey hunt next spring. Again, it's just another opportunity. The other thing to think about is making sure that whatever you do choose to do, that it is realistic and abundant for those participants. If you don't have wild pheasants in your area or you don't have much access for them, think about doing something a little bit different, because the last thing we want to do is get them super excited about hunting, get them through our programs, and then they don't have access within their local communities to go do those hunts. Especially when you're talking about youth who aren't able to travel very far or don't have budgets to travel to places where there are opportunities. A couple of things to note when it comes to wild birds versus pen-raised birds. If you're doing pheasant hunts, you can absolutely have a successful event with either or both of these options. But the big thing to keep in mind is that we absolutely want to put quality first and make sure that they have a great experience. At the end of the day, it's not about how many birds we actually harvest. It's about the entire experience for those participants. So on a wild bird hunt, a couple of the things to think about. The pros are it provides a realistic experience. So we're setting them up for what they're going to be able to go out and do on their own afterwards. It can be a little bit more relaxed in the setting that you don't have people out planting birds. You don't have to worry about the birds running as much. It's going to be more less opportunity, but it's going to be a little bit more relaxed experience. One of the cool parts about if you do a wild bird hunt is you can involve the landowners and bring in the whole habitat aspect. So talk about that conservation ethic and really show that we're the habitat organization and what it takes to have wild birds. And then the other big thing is you don't have to purchase those birds. That's one of the big downfalls of release bird hunts, is that it's sometimes tough to get a hold of those pheasants and they are awfully expensive. The other thing is some of the cons is you're going to have lower harvest rates. Obviously, wild birds are going to be much tougher to get on in most places than the pen-raised place birds. And not everybody has the opportunity to hunt wild birds in their area. So those are just some things to think about. You're obviously going to need more landowners and more land available to you. And you're going to not have as much control over those hunts. If you do a wild bird hunt, a couple of things to think about. You're going to have to find landowners with that quality habitat. You're going to have some really good dog handlers. One thing that I'd like to point out is we do have a national partnership with NAVDA, which is the North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association. And one of the things within that partnership is that they will provide dog handling for our Learn to Hunt events. So if you have a NAVDA chapter in your area, I strongly suggest that you reach out to them or reach out to Katie or Kim or myself, and we can try to get you in contact with that local NAVDA chapter, as they are more than likely willing to help out with your event and bring some quality dogs. Some other things to think about with wild birds, it's going to have to be the timing of the year. Obviously, it's going to have to be in season. You may have some restrictions on your public access sites. So those are some things to think about. Your mentors are going to have to be quality mentors. They're going to be able to put some boots on the ground and little miles with them. You're going to want to make sure your participants are very comfortable, and you're going to want to make sure you pick out the easiest access and terrain for them. At the end of the day, whether it's an adult learn to hunt event or a youth mentored hunt, we have to make it comfortable for them. We don't want to wear them out. We don't want to hunt all day long just trying to get them on birds. So make sure that they're having fun. Again, go back to that number one thing that we talked about, which is they have to have fun, safe enjoyment. And the other thing is just remember why you hunt. That's a big thing that sometimes we miss is what's important to you, and making sure that we tell that story and provide those opportunities to the participants. Tell the entire story to them. So with the pen raised birds, which a lot of our chapter events do use pen raised birds, it may be the only opportunity in the area. If you don't have, again, opportunity for wild bird pheasant hunts, pen raised may be the only option. You do not need as much land, so you can use a 40-acre, 80-acre field and have plenty of room to be able to plant birds and have a safe, controlled hunt. It is going to be a little more controlled opportunity for you, and more than likely your participants are going to have a higher harvest opportunity. Cons that are going to go along with that, though, is you are going to have the cost for those birds. There is a good possibility that you could have a bad experience for participants, whether a bird doesn't want to fly and it runs, or we have sometimes where the dogs will catch the birds along those things. So with those first-time novice hunters, sometimes bad experiences can happen. And sometimes we're setting people up for unrealistic expectations. If you go out on your first hunt and it's a mentored youth hunt and you get your shot that day at 3 or 4 or 5 different pheasants, but you don't have a wild population in your area, it's a pretty unrealistic hunt and it's going to be hard to replicate on your own. The other thing to think about is the perception to non-hunters. And when I'm talking about non-hunters, I'm not talking about your anti-hunters, which it really makes no difference what we do or how we're perceived, because they're always going to look at it in a negative way. I'm talking about the individuals that are in your local community that are just non-hunters. They're open to the sense of hunting, but if they see us using pen released birds, there could be some negative connotations that go with that. Some keys to making sure you have a successful pen raised bird hunt. Again, it goes back to the picking the right mentors, guides, and dogs. But some other things is make sure that the experience is as natural as possible. So if you are going to use pen raised birds, still try to make sure you're doing it in a setting with great habitat. One big thing that people often overlook is having experienced bird planters. So when we're putting those released birds out there, that's a pretty important job. A lot of times we end up giving it to one of the kids that's there, somebody that maybe went through the youth mentor hunt in the past and is now the son or daughter of a volunteer, and they're out there planting those birds. But if they don't know what they're doing, oftentimes that can lead to a bad setting. So make sure that your bird planters know what they're doing and how to properly set them. Only allow the harvest of roosters. Even though it is legal in a lot of settings to where you can harvest with a permit, you can harvest both sexes. To make it a realistic setting, make sure that we're only harvesting rooster pheasants. And also with the same thing is follow your daily bag limits. Even though on a release bird hunt, you may be able to harvest over the state regulations, we don't want to set them up in the wrong fashion. So make sure you're following daily bag limit laws as well. The things we do not encourage is do not allow the participants to see the birds, especially in the cages. I've been to events in the past where there are birds in the cages in the back of a UTV sitting out in the sun all day, and then they take them out, place them, and then come back. There's still birds in there. It just doesn't set up to be a very good event when individuals that are brand new to hunting see that, and then especially if they are kids. When you're working with a 15-year-old kid and their first experience is seeing those birds treated in an unethical way, it's not a good setting. So make sure that they don't see that. Try to keep it in the background as much as possible. Try not to mark the location where the birds are planted. You can mark the location, but keep it between the bird handlers and the guides and the mentors. Don't have a certain spot with an orange flag that's sticking 8 feet out of the ground and tell the participants that's where they're going to be every time. Again, we're just trying to keep it as realistic as possible. And we do not encourage the use of bird launchers. So when you're planning your event, you're going to need to think about volunteers. We always recommend mentors to be one-on-one. That's our best situation. We know that's not always possible, but we always want to shoot for one-on-one. Some situations where you might be okay with a 2-to-1 setting would be like dove hunting, for example. If you're in a stationary hunt to where you have one mentor and 2 participants, that's something we can get away with. You don't want the mentor to be their parent, if possible, or a relative. A lot of times, especially with the youth hunt, those kids just don't listen to their relatives and parents near as well as they would a good mentor. Dog handlers is going to be something you're going to have to seek out. Again, I would encourage you to reach out to NAVDA. You're going to have instructors. You're going to have somebody there to help with wing shooting instruction and all the different training events that you're going to do throughout the day. And then you're also going to need just some general volunteer help. So registration, some people to cook, some people to do the bird planting. There's just a lot of general little things. So the more volunteers that you can have throughout the day, the better. Partnerships. This is a huge part to having a successful Learn to Hunt event. I highly encourage you to make it a community event. The hundreds of different youth mentor hunts and Learn to Hunt events that I've been to over the years, the best ones are where the entire community gets involved. And when I say community, I mean outside of just the Pheasants Forever chapter or the state agency and other NGOs. But when you see things like the local fire and rescue that's playing a role, and you see the local restaurant that is catering for the event, and you see that the local radio station is there, and the entire community gets behind the event, all the better. The more hands, the better. Volunteers have limited capacity, so the more people and the more groups we can involve, the better. And it's one of those things that it's an easy ask in a sense. To ask somebody to come help out at a youth event, especially, they absolutely love helping out at those types of events, and it's very easy to get those sponsored also. There's a lot of times when I've knocked on the doors of businesses and asked for donations for our local banquet, and I get no a lot. Businesses, especially now, it's hard times going on and money is tight, but very seldom do we ever receive a no when you're asking for Learn to Hunt events, youth events, women's events, those types of things. They love supporting those. So it's a great way to fundraise, but other things they can help out with the safety promotion. Your local sheriff usually likes to get involved, conservation officers, local wildlife biologists. Those types of groups are more than willing to help out. One thing that's going to make your event successful is having a conversation with those volunteers ahead of time. A lot of times volunteers show up that day and the event starts at 7 a.m. and they show up and they get paired up with somebody and away they go. Throw them in the fire and let them do their thing. But the best ran events are going to be those that share an agenda ahead of time with their volunteers. Let them know what your objectives are and give them a list of mentoring duties. Tell them what to expect, how to act throughout the day, what is your rules and regulations. Give them something to think about before the event, and then it's usually best to have a mentor and instructor meeting a half an hour before everybody arrives. So that way they're on the same page, everybody knows the guidelines and safety, and read through our Learn to Hunt guidelines and our youth protection guidelines. So that way we're not put into any situations where it could be uncomfortable for the mentor or the mentee. And again, just trying different ways. Each individual is going to learn differently. Some of them learn by sight. Some of them learn better by the instruction given. Some of them, they just have to get their hands dirty. So educate, demonstrate, observe, and congratulate them. That's a big key in a success. Even if someone misses a bird, we have to be right there congratulating them and helping them through that experience. Selecting participants, this is going to be based on, again, having that quality of an experience over the quantity. So that is something that we've really tried to promote over the last couple of years, is that instead of having an event where we have 100 kids go through the day, but they're not getting that one-on-one mentorship and it's not an organized event, we would rather see a really well-ran event with 15 kids with one-on-one mentoring, and it's a great experience. So the big thing with selecting how many participants you can have is how many mentors do you have lined up ahead of the event. If you only have 10 good mentors lined up for the event, you're going to have to limit your participants to 10. It's all going to be based on how many mentors you can have available that day or multiple days for your event. One of the things that we really strongly suggest, and where the outdoor community has missed over the years, is selecting participants that don't have opportunities. What we've seen as we have continued to study on our licensed buyers, and part of our recruiting, retaining, and reactivating, is that in the past, a lot of our events were one-day events, and they were focused on individuals who would have already hunted. So that may be a kid that's parents already hunt, or somebody that had an opportunity, you know, within their own family, within their own circle of friends. So if possible, if you could select participants that have a real strong desire to be there, not that their parents told them to be there, but they want to be there, and they have limited opportunity with mentors in their own family, that's where we are going to make the most headway. And then check your state regulations. I know here in Nebraska, for example, with our youth mentor hunt program, the participants have to be aged 12 to 15. We cannot accept 16-year-olds, and we can't accept 11-year-olds in anything outside of that circle. And that's just based on our state regulations and the permits that the state agency gives us. So just make sure that you're complying with all regulations if you are hunting outside of your regular seasons. Here's an example of an agenda. These training activities are going to be extremely important throughout the day, not just doing the hunt. These are going to be other things that are going to help build them as hunter conservationists. And we always recommend that at least do a 4-hour event. That's kind of the minimum, is a 4-hour event, but the more the better. Firearm safety, wing shooting instruction, dog handling, wildlife biology, gun cleaning, access. Access is a big one to talk about. Talk about after the event, how can they find public access, and how can they get access on private land? Teach them how to properly shake hands, how to be dressed when you go and talk to a landowner, what time of the year to go and talk to private landowners, things that they're going to use after the event to help them be successful. Other things is outdoor survival skills, and then bird cleaning and cooking. So one thing to think about is if you are going to focus on bird cleaning or wild game cooking afterwards, it may be good to have some birds on hand just in case you're not able to harvest many at the event that day. Especially if you're doing a wild bird hunt, it's a good idea to either have some of your mentors or instructors bring some birds that they had in the freezer, or working with actual game raised birds. Firearm management plan. This is one that I see a lot of times that gets left out of the planning process, but it's extremely important that everybody is on the same page when it comes to the handling of the firearms. Where will the guns be stored during each phase of the hunt? How and by whom will they be transported from the field to the trap range to the indoor classroom? Make sure that the mentors especially and the instructors know exactly how everyone's going to handle that. How will the ammunition be stored? Where is the ammunition going to be? Is it going to be in the hands of the mentors, or are we going to allow the participants to have any ammunition in your vest? Those are things that we need to think about ahead of time. And then it's always a good idea to use a different hat or a vest to identify the participants and the mentors, just to keep them separated. One thing to think about is casing of guns. A lot of times at events, we'll see where individuals are bringing as participants, they bring their firearms, they walk in for registration, and they have their guns cased, and then they walk into the event. I always recommend right at the front check-in, have somebody there and uncase your firearms right away. It is great to have them in a case and transporting them in the vehicle, but then I cannot see as an instructor or a mentor when that gun is inside of a case. I can't see if it's loaded. I cannot see if the action is open. So one of the things that I always try to do is right at the front door is uncase the guns and talk about the firearm management plan with the parents, the participants, and the mentors, so everybody's well aware of what's going on. Insurance and waivers. I'm sure you've heard both Kim and Katie talk about this, but this is to help protect yourself and your chapter and all the volunteers that help out. So make sure that you submit all volunteer names prior to your event. By email, they do not allow mail-in submissions anymore, but with the volunteer insurance, that covers all of the volunteers that are helping out. So whether that is a cook or it is a dog handler or it is just somebody taking participation, put their names down on that insurance. They do not have to be a chapter officer. They do not have to be even a Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever member. So even if somebody from the local fire department comes and helps out, put their name down on that list. The other thing that I always say with this is the more the merrier. If your name is on the list, you are covered as a volunteer. So even if, let's say, Joe is a part-time volunteer and he may or may not show up on Saturday, it doesn't hurt to put his name down. So when you send that in the night before your event or that morning, that list, just put a lot of names on there, because if they're on there, they're covered. You're better safe than sorry in that situation. The other thing is now we have waivers that each individual has to sign. So we used to have a participant waiver just for the individuals that were participating, whether they're the youth or women or adults that are the new novice hunters. But now the participant waivers must be signed by everybody. So again, if it's a dog handler or if it is an instructor or it's a participant, make sure that everybody signs a waiver that morning. And that is just to cover everybody. That's to make sure that in case of an accident, they can't come back on you as an individual or on Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever or your chapter. So that is just to help cover everybody. Make sure for this year that you're using the updated waiver forms, because we have added some information in there on COVID, just releasing us from the COVID situation that's going on. So make sure that you are using the new waivers for that. The other thing to mention here is just make sure to follow our Learn to Hunt safety guidelines. Again, it's about the quality of the event and not the quantity. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that everybody is safe and we don't have any accidents. And then after your event, make sure that you report the event either on the chapter portal or on the reporting website. We do not have the Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever reporting app anymore. We were having all kinds of issues with it over the past few months, and we do not have app for reporting. That being said, the chapter portal and the website, which are both housed on the national websites, is mobile friendly. So you can use it just like you would an app. You can pull it right up and put your information in on site if you wish to. A couple of other things to think about. Keepsakes for participants. I have seen some absolutely awesome things after the events that individuals have been given. One thing with the different keepsakes for participants is if you can do it in a timely fashion, it is always best to not necessarily give them out at the event that day, but keep them for your banquet. So if you're doing a Learn to Hunt event in October, but you have a banquet coming up in February, what I strongly suggest, again, to get more people to your banquet is have the participants, invite their parents, have them come to your banquet and do some kind of a recognition at your banquet. And then have whatever keepsakes you're giving away, if you're giving away a lifetime hunt or a shotgun or something along those lines, or even if it's a photography book from the event that day, save those for your banquet. Because if you had 20 kids come to your youth mentor hunt and then you invite them to the banquet and you can get them to bring their parents, you're talking about bringing 60 new bodies to your banquet. So one, you can bring a bunch of new individuals to your banquet, hopefully help you with fundraising. But two, it can make for a really good and exciting way to start an event when you can recognize those individuals and do a youth shotgun drawing or whatever it may be. Photography is another big one. This is a hunt of a lifetime for a lot of these individuals. It's their very first hunt, and it is pretty cool when chapters have professional photographers there or someone within the chapter. Nowadays, cell phones take just as good of pictures as professional photography. So just make sure that you have some dedicated individuals getting some high quality footage for you to be able to use to show your supporters, put together a slideshow for your banquet, but to also be able to share with your participants so they can remember the event. It's also extremely important to thank everybody involved. What I always recommend is buy some general Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever thank you cards and have the participants sign it that day before they take off, so then you can give a nice handwritten note to your volunteers and your supporters of the event. And then also think about giving a participant survey to both the individuals that participated and to your mentors. So you can always try to be making your event better for the future. Last couple of slides here, make sure to share your story. This a lot of times is one of the best events that your chapter does, and we need to make sure to get that word out. One thing that we are pretty bad at doing as an organization, as hunters, as volunteers, is sharing our story and bragging a little bit about the great things that we do. So I always recommend contacting your local media, whether that's a local TV station, radio, newspaper, at least a month in advance. They have a lot of things going on, but reach out to them personally. If you just send them a blank flyer or an email, it's going to be tough. But if you can get a contact there, reach out to them, have them come to your event. You are going to want to kind of guide them, have somebody be in charge to guide them that day, the media contacts, if they do show up, so they are telling the proper story. You want them to tell everybody what you want the public to hear. So have them focus in on the right things beyond just the harvest. Have them focus in on the wild game cooking or certain individuals or mentors, whatever that may be. Last couple of things is social media. We live in a world of instant social media content, and it's free in most cases. So make sure that you put together a nice post and press release. A lot of times your local newspapers will run press releases for free. And again, we do have examples there where you just have to kind of plug in your information, but we do have press releases that you can utilize. So in order to create a hunter, there's three main things that you have to focus on at these events. You have to provide them the skills needed to safely and efficiently go on a hunt. You're going to want to show them how to find resources. The resources are going to be extremely important, whether that's access or land or to animals. They have to know how to find resources on their own. And then the biggest thing is you have to really inspire them. The spirit of hunting and conservation is something that they have to be fired up about, want to do on their own, not just because they got dropped off by their parents that day. So providing those skills is extremely important. And these are the things that we just talked about. You're going to teach them that day about shooting skills, habitat, hunting techniques, game cleaning, and firearm care. If you hit on all of those types of things, they should have the skills. The resources is extremely important. A couple of tips that we always do at our local events around here is doing a live demonstration on Onyx, where we're showing the individuals how to use Onyx, pull it up on a computer screen. That's been really popular one. The other thing is having our local conservation officers come and talk about what's available for public access and providing our public access atlases. At least here in Nebraska, the state agency does still print those booklets. And it's really nice to give all of our participants a booklet to take home to where they can see some of those rules and regulations and where to hunt after the event. The other thing to think about is most all of our events across the country are one-day events. And we have really been pushing our volunteers and our staff members and our agency partners to try to go above and beyond those one-day events. Now, we do know that typically a chapter is short on volunteers, they're short on time, and the capacity is not there to be able to do a banquet, to be able to do a pollinator event, to be able to do more than just a one-day learn to hunt event. So we know that that's reality, and that is the typical case for most of our local PF and QF chapters across the country. But if you are one of those chapters that has the capacity to do more above and beyond, and you have a lot of volunteers that are eager to help out, it's really something to think about to do multi-day events, learn to hunt experiences, especially if it's an adult event, to where you could do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday type of a camp setting. Consider seasonal programs where maybe you do a dove hunt in the fall and turkey hunt in the spring. Think about shooting sports in the summertime, shooting sports events before the Learn to Hunt event to help just give those multiple contacts with participants. And one thing, even if you are doing a one-day event, is I am really pushing our chapters to encourage family participation. I've seen over the years so many parents that come and drop their kids off at the event, and then they come back 5 hours later to pick them up. And it's simply because we've never asked them to participate. A lot of those fathers and mothers don't hunt themselves. And one way to really hook that new participant is to involve the parents in the setting. So make sure that you're making it family friendly and not just a youth event. With that, that's all I have. But again, I want to thank everybody that's on the webinar. Thank you for joining us here tonight, but also just thank you for everything that you do for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, whether it's a banquet, whether it's a mentor hunt, whether it's just being a member. Our hunting heritage is dependent on individuals like yourselves. And this is a picture of my daughter last fall holding up a mallard duck that she was so excited about. We as an organization and across this country, just as hunters in general, are not going to get pictures like that or have opportunities for pictures like that if it isn't for individuals like yourself. So again, I can't thank you enough for everything that you do for our organization. I'd love to have some questions.
All right, so I did just bring that up. If you have a question, make sure to remember to unmute yourself. Otherwise, we won't be able to hear you. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to shoot them away.
No questions.
You did that good of a job.
So yeah, you're getting off easy. And there were no questions in the chat. I did share a couple links while Colby was talking. I shared the link for NAVDA to find the chapters. So for those of you who are interested in pursuing that route, just go to that link. You can look up the, there's one chapter listed in Missouri, but if you look under Kansas, there's also kind of a MOCAN chapter. So depending on where you are in the state, there might be one or two options for you for Missouri chapters, and same, you can look up those Illinois chapters as well for NAVDA on there. And then I also shared the link just to the chapter resource portal, where you can log in to get that firearm event insurance guide, submit your event reporting forms, all that kind of stuff. So there's a ton to be done at that chapter portal link. So
like Colby said, thank you guys for everybody that gave up their evenings and their days and their hours for Pheasants Forever. We greatly appreciate it. We did record tonight's webinar. I will be posting that online either tomorrow or the next day. And as we've done with our previous webinars, we will send that out to everybody that has registered. We'll also include some of the material that Colby talked about, like the firearm waivers, some of the checklist timelines, the Learn to Hunt guides. We'll have all that included. Feel free to share that with anybody that's in the chapter that you know of that hosts these events. And if anybody ever has any questions, feel free to reach out to myself, Kim, or Colby, and we'll help you out in whatever way we can to get your youth and adult Learn to Hunt events going.
yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. We really appreciate you being here.
So thank you and have a good night.
Thank you.